You were in the chamber last night. You applauded at various times. Tell me the one substantive thing that you most agreed with in what President Trump had to say.
Well, there are a number of areas where I agreed with President Trump, but one that I was sort of jumping to my feet about was the idea that we should rebuild American infrastructure, and in doing so, we should hire American and buy American. One of my concerns, David, was exactly how we're going to pay for this and make sure that an ambitious trillion-dollar infrastructure package actually does build new infrastructure rather than simply enriching particular investors or refinancing already approved and underway projects.
Well, as you say, paying for it seems to be the rub. There's a general perception the Republicans don't want a deficit spend for infrastructure. The Democrats do. Where are you on that? Are you willing to increase the deficit to invest in infrastructure?
I am willing to increase the deficit to spend on infrastructure, but I think we should look closely at exactly what tools we use to make sure that we are, in fact, creating net new high-quality American jobs, that we are investing in infrastructure that makes economic sense, and that we're getting private sector participation and skin in the game.
Senator, one of the things that our audience is most interested in, I suspect your constituents in Delaware are interested in, is tax reform, particularly paying less taxes, to be frank. Where is the process there? We're told we have to go through Obamacare first. If you were advising a business leader or a constituent from Delaware, when would you tell them that they can expect some tax relief?
When can they expect some tax relief? I'd say no sooner than the end of the year, because I think, as you saw last night, the president is clear that he intends to repeal and somehow replace the Affordable Care Act. But Republicans in Congress have not come together around a consensus plan, and there's significant disagreements. And if they choose to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act the same way it was enacted through the so-called reconciliation process, which takes just 51 votes, they're going to have to do that first, and that could take months. And frankly, tax reform is very difficult. When you add a new tax, like the border tax that the president's proposing, you could raise new revenue, and you could encourage one sector of industries, but you could punish another. So there's going to be a lot of fighting about exactly which taxes go up and which go down.
Are you open to the border adjustment tax, or are you against it?
My gut instinct is to be against it, but I'd have to see the details. It is true that other countries impose a VAT tax or other taxes, so I think there is a way that we could create a border-adjusted tax that would actually pass muster and not create a trade war with some of our opponents. If we're going to do some of the bold things that we can agree on, like strengthening our military, supporting our veterans, rebuilding infrastructure, we are going to need revenue to pay for it. So I'm open to any reasonable proposal from this administration.
Senator, what would you be willing to cut in order to get a lower corporate tax rate, a lower individual tax rate, and potentially not a border adjustment tax? What are you willing to cut from discretionary spending?
Well, where I think we ought to be looking is where we currently have loopholes, where we currently have tax exemptions. There are ways that we can broaden the base and lower rates through tax reform. Our discretionary spending, I'll just remind you, as a percentage of our total federal spend is already at the lowest level since the Eisenhower administration. And so if we're going to grow our economy by investing in education or doing some of the medical research to find cures that the president talked about last night, you can't simultaneously do that by slashing investment in things like medical research, health care, and education for this country.
Senator, the president last night addressed the question of lost manufacturing jobs in recent years. That's something that I know you're sympathetic to him on. You have taken that up as one of the things you want to pursue. Are you not fighting against history? I'm going to put up a chart. You won't be able to see it, but you'll be able to imagine it. It comes from the United Nations, actually. Not just about U.S. manufacturing jobs as a percentage of GDP, but across the world, including Germany and Japan and stuff. Over time, that's really been declining. Can that really be reversed?
Well, I do think we can stabilize and even grow manufacturing employment in the United States. We can't go back to the very high level of manufacturing employment we had 10 or 20 years ago. Because despite a lot of the rhetoric about free trade agreements being the main reason we've lost manufacturing jobs, the main reason is innovation. It just takes fewer people to make the same number of things as it did years or decades ago. So there's a combination of things we can and should do to fight for American manufacturing. And Republican Senator Jerry Moran and I have joined together with a dozen of our colleagues to form the Competitiveness Caucus to look at the things we can do in tax and immigration, in intellectual property or invention policy, to try and strengthen the case for American manufacturing and to try and grow the number of high-skilled, high-wage manufacturing jobs in this country.